My babies, what's up? How are we today? Did a decent video about sacrificing from who I am right now instead of I'm not who I am becoming. Yeah, you have to watch that video. But it's funny because like after writing that note, another note showed up. Is the nature of sacrifice imposed or choice? And this is basically it's funny. I love reading my notes after each other because sometimes without noticing, over a period of like an hour or two, I kind of write 3, 4 notes that kind of link to each other, but without that train of thought kind of pulls through when it starts flowing in one direction. But is the nature of sacrifice imposed or choice? And here, I discussed something of this nature earlier in the video before this, but here is more of me discussing how we can put ourselves in a position where we have to choose, when we have to sacrifice. Whilst in other places, we create the environment where we sacrifice by choice in order for us to always be the last decision maker, the last person to say something, the last one, I don't know, to have the last say. All right. So, is the nature of sacrifice imposed or a choice? Well, sacrifice in general is just such a big thing that most of the time we think when you're sacrificing, it's something that you have to do. But I feel when you have to sacrifice is when it's too late. When you have to sacrifice something is when you should have considered such an outcome a while back. And the actual metaphor that I used back then in the previous video, literally the previous video, is it is better to be a warrior on a farm than to be a farmer in a war. And the idea behind this, and I'm going to go into it again, and I don't mind repeating stuff, by the way. I think our issue with as human beings is the fact that we don't really go over things over and over again to kind of like make sure they're there fully. But if a guy trains to be a warrior but farms versus a guy training to be a farmer but goes to war, who has a better chance of surviving at war and who has a better chance of surviving on the farm? Both of them have good chances of surviving on the farm, albeit the farmer maybe has a bit more of a chance because he'll be more efficient because that's his training. But in war, the warrior will definitely have a much better chance of surviving, and the farmer would have very small chances of surviving. So the goal is to always be working yourself towards in life as if you are going to meet the unknown. And the goal is for you to be strong enough to handle the unknown and to be prepared enough to deal with the unknown. Strong enough to handle the unknown, prepared enough to deal with the unknown. So the nature of sacrifice is imposed, yes, but only when we run out of choices. When we run out of choices, normally is the choices we make or chose not to make have basically piled up in a certain direction. So if I were to choose every single day, for example, to exercise, then when the time comes and I would be suffering, for example, from like old age, at the very least, I would be healthy. And I don't know if it's a postponement of this or a handling, because I've been seeing like 50, 60-year-olds are in beautiful shape, dude. And all they attribute it to is because consistency. Well, I've seen other people that like never did it, and at the age of 40, 50, they basically start training, but it's not that it's too late. It's that they have to work through a lot more damage in order for them to feel the healthy again. Right? So if we look at these two things, like actually the health, the physical health of the human being, as more of a tangible example for us to actually engage with this. The people that shows that did not make the choices, by the time they got to like the age where they're feeling pain, they had to sacrifice everything else they could be doing in order to restore their jism, in order to restore their health. Whilst the people that were actually making smaller sacrifices every single day, by the time they reach 40, what happens is they don't really feel that pain. These small sacrifices are enough of a choice for them to be able to consistently develop and grow and be prepared and be stronger and be basically, I don't know, healthier, because that's the actual example we're using. So sacrifice becomes imposed when there's no choice anymore. Because when you don't have any more options that you can do, then there's something you have to sacrifice. It's either going to be money to pay for surgery, which is normally not the solution. Because most of the time, after you're finished with a doctor, what do they advise you? To do the things that you weren't really doing, that led you to them. Amazing. It's like every doctor's visit is like, don't forget to brush your teeth. Nah, what the fuck, man? Of course. Every doctor's visit is like, don't forget to eat your vitamins. It's like, okay, fruit. And like for the people that are really sick, it's always like, don't forget this, don't forget that, don't forget this, don't forget that, blah, 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 blah. The doctor's job is supposed to support our health, but not. Sorry, I'm using health, and for some reason I went on a tangent. But anyways, imagine the things you actually have to sacrifice if you have no choice. What are the things you could be forced to sacrifice? Money, health, family, relationships. What? 2 videos ago, I was discussing business and how relationships and business, and I was discussing. One second. All right. So on the last video, I was discussing the business behind like if I were to actually if I want a certain position that demands of me certain things, and basically I was given that position, how do I make decisions on what to sacrifice for it or not? Because ultimately I'm either sacrificing for the position, right? I'm either sacrificing for the position, or I'm sacrificing bits and pieces of myself so I could level up and be strong enough so when the position happens, I don't actually have to sacrifice anything. And the idea behind it is always like I have to choose if sacrifice is always a choice when it comes to things that I would do about myself. But maybe it becomes imposed when I'm forcing something on me. Because if I'm forcing something on me, then the things that I have to sacrifice are the things that contribute to me. Because the last thing I can afford is to actually give up a part of me. Right? Or maybe we could be aware enough to actually let go of parts of us. But I've seen people become very egotistical and narcissistic. And they can't help it because pressure literally does that to people. Pressure kind of strengthens and builds on top of your, I don't know, it either hides the weaknesses or it molds you. Like brain plasticity is something amazing, but what do we sacrifice when it's under pressure? Right? And I had this experience in a boot camp. I think I'll talk about it sometime in the future. But sacrifice, man, it's like, are you willing to sacrifice for the sake of something else? And when it comes to other things that are not you, are you sacrificing something worthy of sacrificing? Why am I asking these questions? The nature of sacrifice is imposed. When it comes to you, you always can make a choice of sacrifice. When it comes to the outside world or the things you engage with, you almost never have a choice of sacrifice. It's imposed on you. You either let go or you don't. And I think the point that I wanted to make was when you yourself are actually like intentional about where you want to go. You make a choice to sacrifice things in yourself so that when the time comes, you have a choice not to act. You don't really actually have sacrifice imposed on you when it comes to everything else around you that you like. Because ideally, you would have literally worked through the things that would have allowed such a sacrifice to be a possibility. And when the time comes, that sacrifice is not even an option because you've become the kind of person that can handle all kinds of things without anyone imposing any form of sacrifice on you, without the pressure of sacrificing stuff to be imposed on you. You literally would have chosen chosen the parts of you that you needed to kind of like let go of, change, build, create, so that you'll be able to make a better choice in the future. Hello. All right, babies. Yalla. I will see you. It's a video.